So just so you all know, there's about 67,000 pounds of food that have been donated since July of last year, which those products would have normally gone into a waste system. So that tells me that we had a little problem that we need to divert some food. We're also now partnering with many of the nonprofits and a lot of local businesses because we cannot work with food chains that will, at the end of the day, put that particular, whatever they have left over, back into that food system for our food insecure population. That led us to create what's now called the Food Security Drive Team, that we abbreviate as the FSDT team. If anybody wants to volunteer on that, we take volunteers each week. And they literally drive food from food line distribution all over the county to be delivered into the Farm to Fridge program. I gave you all a little fact sheet that shows you what this looks like. There is one in the South Branch Library. It is at least serviced at least once a week, and we try to put about 400 pounds a month in there. I know it's not significant to cover all of our needs, but at least it's an attempt to get there. Ripe for Revival, how many of you have heard about Ripe for Revival? Okay, well, I'm going to start from the ground up then. So Ripe for Revival is a mobile pay-as-you-can market that comes to our area. Their for-profit side is called Ripe Revival out of Rocky Mount, and they buy food from local farmers. So their Class A or Grade A food goes back into the food system in either delivery boxes or into grocery stores and things like that. Their Grade B and C stuff comes into the mobile market that travels here every Tuesday. It is currently located at 117 Wall Street. I just got back from there. Every Tuesday from 3 to 4:30 p.m. They have milk, eggs, and produce, and meat. Now, there is a limit on eggs, milk, and meat just because of the cost, but a family can come in and get any of those resources that they need and pay as you can, meaning that if I need to go and I need to pay $1, I have food for the week. So my last year in Granville County, just from July to January, we had 29 events. We did over 3,000 pounds of produce. They gave us over 299 pounds just free to put back in the Farm to Fridge, and we served 609 families, and as far as individuals, 2,436 individuals. So we're sorry, I don't think it's on this sheet. I'm sorry. Okay. So all of these numbers are all of our folks. One of the things that we found, and I've spoken with city manager, because the southern end is really still lacking. So in order to bring the Ripe for Revival market, it's about $716 per market. Now, one of the really, really cool things is I got a grant from United Way of Granville County in the amount of $3,750. But in order to bring this to the southern end of the county, either we can do it by market or for an entire year, which is $37,500. Now, I've been talking to a lot of the county commissioners. They are writing letters of support. I do have other grants out there asking for help to bring this to the southern end of the county. There's also been several other expansion ideas of potentially bringing ACIM, a satellite office, into the southern end of the county. I'm working with Reverend Gaddis Falcon to see if we can help him get that building up. But in the meantime, we have a lot of people who are saying, I need the support in southern Granville County. And you all know that one of the barriers to accessing food is transportation. So I'm also working with the CARTAR COGS and the CART service about potential ideas for how do we bring some of those transportation things so we can get people to the mobile market. So the ways you all can help are obviously monetary donations. You can also volunteer with us to put up donated items, pick up donations. You can make food donations. you can make contributions to either one of the programs, and of any amount, and we will take that money and put it back into the southern end of the county. And this is my contact information. If anyone has questions, I don't know if you have any questions that you have for me right now, or...
Commissioner Wilkins, any questions?
No, I worked on the board of ACIM for a number of years, so I understand food insecurity. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. We partner with Ann quite frequently.
Commissioner Albright.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for what you do for our community.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Just the $716, that's a donation for a market. What does that get? I mean,
so that literally means the truck comes to Creedmoor or to the southern end, wherever we can decide, because I know sometimes congestion, we do need it to be somewhere that's easily accessed and doesn't have a traffic issue. And they will come and set up, and they'll have the meats and milk and eggs and produce, and people can just go and pay whatever they can.
so that's a one-time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only question.
Commissioner Kuczynski.
So Wendy, when we spoke, I thought that you had said that Butner had set up a spot for you in the southern end of the county.
They have, but it kind of, like, I've tried to do the thing where we work together.
Right.
So if Creedmoor has a place and Butner has a place, and we can try and figure out that location as a better location,
Right.
then I'm willing to entertain that.
Or we could alternate.
Or alternate different things, because I don't want people in Creedmoor to say, and I've heard this, oh, well, Butner got this and we didn't. Or I don't want people in Creedmoor to say, oh, well, Creedmoor got this and Butner didn't. So I'm trying to be respectful of Commissioner May's request that it be on the southern end.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. I wish you the best of luck. And if you need letters or support or anything, just let city manager know, and we'll send those to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. All right. We move down to request to address the board. There is none for item 7. Item 8, public comment. Mr. Agdepa. Well, he's done that too.
You want Bobby to hold your hat?
Sorry, Mayor, but
I can hit a trash can with it from here.
I'm looking for Carolina Starkey. I cannot find one. Oh, sorry. Very quick, thank you for always allowing me to speak. I'm Mayor Agdepa, 514 Lake Road here in Creedmoor. Very quick, Mayor, and thank the board. I just want to salute you and the board, and I think my friend got cost, number one. That urgent care, I drive one of you, so what are you building here? And we've been, since I live here for many years, I told Mike, oh, what are you going to put there? We cannot just tell anybody to put as a private property. We try Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, did not work. Now we finally has, oh, what, that's urgent care. So Mike, you're the best. You need a Paris. So I'm glad, Mayor, that you pulled that out. I hope that somebody can buy the other side. I think Creedmoor will be complete, I guess. All business will be filled. And number 2, Mayor, I will make it quick. Thank you for the city during the snowstorm. I went to work that night. It's so clean from 56 all the way to McDonald there. Butner did not clean. They did not clean the road at all. And so hard to go to the hospital that night. That snowstorm, I almost an hour to go to the hospital. But Butner did not do their part. I told the mayor about it. But the Creedmoor, I see the sign, the Creedmoor truck all the way. Oh, it's so clean. Creedmoor did very good. And thank you for that, Mayor. And the last one, Mayor, is that every time I go to the store, the Food Lion, some people ask me, when you see those signs in the streets, yeah, they're beautiful. But some will say, I don't know, I don't work in the city. I said, where is the police and fire sign? Oh, I don't know. So they see the community park, the Lake Rogers Community Center. So where is the fire and police? I said, oh, I don't know. So I will let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, we move now to old business 9A, Davenport Financial Services update.
Lee, thanks.
Yep, yeah, I got it. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure Lee was gonna step up there or not. That's all right, you have the floor. They just don't think I know what I'm doing. Sometimes I wonder that too.
Good evening, Mayor, Board. Tonight I have with us Mitch Bergoglio to give update on funding scenarios in regards to the ongoing discussions we've been having regarding the police department construction. In the last month, you all received updated numbers, so I gave those numbers to Davenport to run some updated scenarios, and that's what he's here tonight to present to you all. So let Mitch take over.
Great. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members. Thank you for having me this evening. I will try to keep this brief, but certainly if I'm going too quickly, please stop me, slow me down, and if you have questions along the way, please don't hesitate to interrupt. As Lee said, given the discussions regarding the updated project and cost estimates, we wanted to come this evening and talk to you all about potential funding options if you choose to move forward with the project. And, you know, with a project this size, one of those funding options will be debt financing. And so just for background purposes, wanted to start out with just high level, 50,000 foot view. What are some of the things that you all need to be thinking about that lenders will be looking at you all as a city in terms of determining your credit quality and what you all can do to partially control that or help in accessing the capital markets as part of that. And then we'll get into some of those funding options and scenarios. So page 4 of my book, 32, I think, in your agenda packet, is a very high level on credit ratings. And you know, think about a credit rating as in our personal lives. We all, go out to buy a car and we get a car loan. We go out to buy a house, we get a mortgage, we get a credit score, right? One of these major credit agencies give us a score. It's a numerical score. Well, a credit rating for a municipality is very similar. You get letters instead of numbers for your score, but there's 3, now 4 major rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, Fitch, and Kroll, who provide these formal credit ratings. You all do not have a formal credit rating because you have not needed one, right? You only need one if you sell municipal bonds in the public credit markets, if you issue securities. You all have one existing loan that was done as a bank loan directly with a bank, and so you did not need a credit rating. So why am I talking about credit ratings? Well, when we go to banks or lenders or the public markets, your credit is going to be evaluated. And in our discussions with banks as part of their review process, what we've learned is that a lot of the things that they're looking at and evaluating, assigning you all an internal credit score that they come up with is very similar to what these national credit rating agencies look at. So just to give you all some perspective, we can look at the national credit rating agencies' methodologies, their scoring system, and give you some perspective about how either they or the banks will evaluate you. And then along the way, as we look at some of these ratios, we will compare you to other municipalities, and for purposes of this comparison, we'll compare you to other rated cities and towns, both nationally and within North Carolina. And the right side of the page just gives you a little bit of perspective on who falls into those categories. So, page 33 of your book, what goes into a credit rating? Well, this page 33 summarizes Moody's Investor Service's credit rating methodology. And the others are fairly similar. This is kind of the most simplest, concise version to talk about. And they have 4 major categories. economy, institutional framework, which institutional framework is really just you're a city organized under the general statutes of North Carolina. So there's nothing you can do about that. That's your score. Financial performance and leverage, which is just a fancy way of saying your debt and liabilities that you have to pay in the future. And I think what's important to understand here is with economy, that's things like your assessed value, your the personal income, demographics of the citizens of the city, population, those type of things. There's nothing you can really do to control that as part of this upcoming year's budget, right? You can do zoning, you can do economic development initiatives to try to influence that, but that's more longer term to see those come to fruition. So that is 30% of the rating. And then if you include institutional framework, 40% of the rating methodology that you don't really have direct control over, right? The other two, financial performance and debt outstanding, you do have direct control over. You can adopt certain things as part of this budget, or some of your approvals will have a direct influence on these two categories. So, and that represents 60% of the overall rating methodology, or how a lender will evaluate your credit. So, thought we'd maybe take a moment and give you a little sense of those two categories that you have direct control over. Page 35 of your book looks at this financial performance, and we're focused on the general fund here. The top left graph is a look at your annual financial performance, your revenues versus your expenses. And if you look at the graph, the gold line is your annual operating revenue coming in. The dark green and the light green bars are your ongoing expenses, your operating expenses and your annual debt payment. And what you see is for each of the last 5 years, that gold line is above those green bars. That means you all have done a nice job of maintaining a structurally balanced budget. Your annual inflows are greater than your annual outflows. Your annual revenues greater than your annual expenses. And that has resulted in the bottom chart of your general fund balance increasing over time over the last 5 years. In total, we've added about $2.7 million to general fund balance since 2020. So that's really set you all up nicely as you consider funding a larger capital project, like we're talking about tonight. So you're in a good shape there. The other piece that we wanted to look at here on the next page, page 36, is that you all do have a general fund balance policy. You all have established a goal to maintain general fund balance available for appropriation, which we'll look at as unassigned general fund balance. Y'all probably talked about that as part of the audit. That's that sort of bottom bucket that you have flexibility to spend on whatever you choose to. That unassigned fund balance should be at least 70% of the current year's expenditures, right? And if you look at the chart on the bottom left, you can see how in that light green line is your unassigned fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. You can see how that's trended. And you all have been over 150% every year of the last 5 years. So you've been well in compliance with that policy. You're starting from a position of strength. The middle box there on the bottom is a look at your policy level and what that minimum fund balance requirement would be. So as of fiscal year 24, at 70% of your general fund expenditures, right? So column B being your general fund expenditures, column C there would be your policy requirement. $4.4 million would be the minimum amount you would need. You had roughly $9.6 million, right? So you have about $5 million, a little over $5 million more than what your absolute minimum policy limit would require. That's going to give you some flexibility as you look to fund capital projects as well. So it's kind of twofold here, right? You kind of checking the box on that credit side of things. You're in good shape on that financial performance side. And you have been able to set aside some dollars to help you fund future projects if you choose to do that. Okay? All right, on the debt side, this is pretty simple. You have very little debt outstanding. You have one loan outstanding. It's a short-term loan, pays off by fiscal year 2030, that is for a new fire truck, right? So pay about $50,000, just under $50,000 a year. It's all paid off by fiscal year 30. So you're really starting with minimal, basically no debt, long-term debt outstanding as we look to options to fund this project. Just for perspective, and this will become more meaningful as you move forward and fund capital projects, we do typically look at 3 key debt ratios when evaluating your debt portfolio, and this is on page 39. 10-year payout ratio is how much of your principal outstanding are you repaying in the first 10 years. So if you borrow $10 million and you repay $5 million over the first 10 years, that's a 50% payout ratio. And typical policy levels for this 10-year payout ratio range from like 50 to 60%. You all, with the one loan you have outstanding paying off by fiscal 30, are at 100%, right? So you're as good as you can be on this ratio. The next two, debt to assessed value, so your debt outstanding as a percentage of your tax base. Typical policy ranges is 2 to 3%. Y'all are at 0.04%, right? So basically zero. You stack up very nicely to where those potential policy ranges would be. And then on the far right, debt service to expenditures. What is your annual debt service payment as a percentage of your overall governmental expenditures? Again, another measure of how much debt you have outstanding, and it's less than 1% of your overall budget, right? Typical policy, 15 to 20%. So point is, you have very little debt outstanding, and within these ratios, we would say you have debt capacity, right? As you look to fund this project, it is reasonable to consider debt as part of the funding mechanism for that project. Doesn't mean you have to, but it's an option if you want to consider it. You have the capacity. Related to that debt capacity is a similar concept, debt affordability, right? Just because you have the capacity under these ratios doesn't mean you have the dollars to pay for it, right? And so that oftentimes is the bigger question, right, is the affordability side of things. And we're going to look at that as we go forward. Okay, so thinking about this project and what are our options if you want to fund it, we've got a summary of some options here for you on page 41. And first is grants, right? To the extent you can get grants and outside funding sources, all the better, right? No city dollars are required, and that's the best case scenario. With grants, you often have to apply for them, qualify and or apply for them, and have them awarded. So it's not in your control, solely in your control of getting these grant funds. And oftentimes what we see is, they're obviously limited in the use, right? It's typically for a specific project. Sometimes they can be more broad. And sometimes they can limit the type of project you can fund or how you can construct the project. The grant may put certain restrictions on it that don't align with what you would like. And oftentimes the grant isn't enough, right? It's a partial grant and there's additional city dollars required. So even if you do get a grant, oftentimes these other options are needed to make up a differential. The second option is pay-go financing, right? So that's cash funding, taking reserves, taking current year revenues, and paying for that project, not borrowing for it. And that's fantastic if you can do it. You don't have any interest payments, right? You save on interest payments. But oftentimes you may not have enough upfront to pay for a project. And so you have to wait multiple years to get to the point where you can pay for it, and costs can change, or you may need that project sooner than later and you can't wait. Just like grants too, you may not have the full amount that you can pay in cash for a project, so you may need to combine it with some of these other sources. Then we get into some of the debt funding options. General obligation bonds are a pledge of the city's full faith and credit in taxing power. So basically, you're telling a general obligation bondholder, if you issue GO bonds, you're telling the person who buys it that we will set the tax rate at whatever level it has to be, not subject to any tax cap, and we will pay for this debt service. And if we don't, you make us set the tax rate, we just have to do it. That's the best credit you can offer a lender. That's the most preferred, oftentimes gives you the best credit rating or credit score, and lowest interest rate. However, it requires a referendum, and that can be difficult in terms of timing, right? Because you can only hold a referendum at the time of a citywide election, and then after the referendum is approved, there's still a process that you have to go through. What we've seen from bonds that were approved last year in November of 2024, it's really, right around this time of year where they're able to issue. We have our first issuer who was approved last November selling bonds later this month. So it's about another 5 months on top of the referendum before you can issue the debt. So the timing of a referendum may not line up with when you need the funds to move forward with a project. And then there's always the risk of if you've got a project that you have to do and the voters don't approve it, but you still have to have the project, then what do you do? So positives and negatives are considerations, so to speak, of a GO bond. But that's a very common funding source for debt. The other most common funding source is installment financings or limited obligation bonds. This is a pledge of an asset, kind of like you did with the fire truck. You borrow the money from a bank or from a lender, and you give them a lien or a mortgage on an asset, like you put a lien on the fire truck as security. If you don't pay for that, pay the debt service, principal and interest payments, they can foreclose on the fire truck. Same thing. It does not require a referendum. It does require a public hearing, and so you have more flexibility with timing. Typically, slightly higher interest rate than the general obligation bonds. The last option here, special obligation bonds, is a pledge of non-taxing revenue generated from non-taxing authority. There are some very specific regulations with these bonds. Has to be done within a municipal service district. There's a lot more steps to go through that I don't think line up with the project that you all are looking at here. But if there's a need to look into that further, that is another funding source that's available to cities like yourself. I think what we're looking at here is likely a grant, some combination of grants, PAYGO, installment financing, right? That's the typical mix of debt funding options that we would see. Once you kind of make that decision of how you're going to borrow the money, there's options for where you get the money from. You can go directly to a bank. You can go through a public sale process. That's where you sell securities. You have to get a credit rating. It's a more involved process, but those are two options within what I'd call the capital markets, right? Those where you go to private lenders to borrow money. The last option is state and federal programs. USDA is a common approach that we see. They offer some subsidized interest rates, longer term loans, but you have to have them involved very early in the process. They have to review project bids and specifications and sign off on it all along the way, have to qualify for the loan. So there's a lot more steps that go with that process. But those are kind of the options that you would have in front of you. Whichever option you go with, the local government commission for this type of project is going to have to approve the loan. And so I did want to just mention this as we consider options. I think it's important to understand that the LGC will have to approve some form of the financing. And as part of that, in order to approve the loan, they will have to make certain findings. And we've highlighted a couple here for you. One is that the amount of the project is adequate but not excessive. So how do they get there? How do they know that it's adequate but not excessive? They look to see that you have bids in hand for the project. So in order to get a financing, you have to get to the point of designing the project, bidding it out, and having bids for the contractor before you can get LGC approval and have the money on hand. That's a key part of the schedule that we need to keep in mind. And then they have to make certain findings about your debt management procedures and any tax rate increases, that your debt management is good, you're going to pay back the debt, and any tax rate increases are adequate but not excessive. So those need to be identified as part of the planning process and shared with the LGC before their approval. Okay? So that leads us into, I know that was a really long intro, I'm sorry, but I think it's, wanted you to have the background. That leads us into the project. And big picture on this project, y'all are more familiar with it than we are. But as we understand it, revisiting this police department project, recent cost estimates have been approximately just over $5 million. For our purposes, we're going to run $5.3 million of total project costs with some contingency and potential financing costs built into that. And our understanding is that it's anticipated that bids will be in hand for the project later this spring, perhaps as early as May or June of this year, that you could have bids in hand for the project. Again, that's important because it'll drive the schedule for the financing. So, we've looked at three potential funding scenarios. Scenario one is where you borrow the full amount of the project cost, $5.3 million. Scenario two is where you utilize $2 million of that general fund balance, that you have excess fund balance, and you reduce the borrowing amount of the project to $3.3 million. Scenario three is you borrow the full $5.3 million, and instead of using the $2 million to reduce the project cost, you set it aside in a reserve fund and you help use it to offset the debt service payments, the payments of principal and interest, okay? So those are the three scenarios we looked at. And they're summarized on page 45. Behind tab A of this book is all the detail, and I'm not going to go through it tonight, but if you're a glutton for numbers like I am, all of it's back there for you to take a look at. But the key thing here, I think, for you all is that when we look at lines 11 through 15, those debt ratios, right, that just kind of proves out what I've said to you is you have the debt capacity. There's a couple of years where your payout ratio may fall below 50%, but it's really just 1 year. Otherwise, your debt ratios look good in any of these scenarios. They would be below potential policy levels. So the debt capacity is there if you wanted to borrow up to the full amount. The affordability is down below. And right now, you've only got the one loan. You don't have any debt paying off within your debt service budget to free up dollars. So really, any new debt that you add, you're going to have to come up with the dollars in the budget to pay for that. And what we've shown you here, that all the dollars are in the back in Appendix A, the details, but for summary purposes, we've equated it to the equivalent number of pennies within your budget, right? And it's equivalent number, doesn't necessarily mean new. You can find them within your existing budget, but this is the number of pennies that would need to be dedicated to set aside to pay for debt service. Scenario one, again, is not using any of the set-aside general fund balance, borrowing the full $5.3 million. You would need to come up with the additional dollars, equivalent number of 2 pennies in fiscal 26, and then another 6 pennies in fiscal year 27, the equivalent of a total of 8 pennies. Now, you could also consider doing all of that, coming up with those dollars up front in the fiscal 26 budget and setting it aside a little early. If you do that, that would take it from 8.1 down to about 6.5 equivalent pennies that you would need under this scenario. Scenario two is borrowing less. Right now, we're only borrowing 3.3 million instead of 5.3, and we're using some of that general fund balance. And so the amount of revenue or equivalent number of pennies comes down a little bit, about 1.25 pennies in fiscal '26 and another 3.75 in fiscal '27 for a total of 5. If you do it all up front in fiscal '26, cuts it down to about 4. Scenario 3 is looking at, again, borrowing the 5.3, but using $2 million of that general fund balance to help cover the principal and interest payments. And if you do that approach, you would be able to cover roughly the first 4 years of principal and interest payments on the loan. You wouldn't need to come up with new or additional revenue. That wouldn't happen until fiscal year 2030, right, where you would need 2.5 pennies and an additional 3.7 in fiscal 31. Total of 6.2. If you did it all up front in fiscal year 26, it would be about 3.7. So scenario 2 and 3 kind of gets you to roughly the same point, right? You're setting aside the same amount of general fund balance dollars. It's the timing of when you would absolutely need it that changes between the two scenarios. Certainly, there's other scenarios that we could look at and run, but in talking with staff, didn't want to overwhelm you, so it felt like this gave you hopefully a good feel. We did run some sensitivities, so for like scenario 2, if you were to use an additional $3 million, or initial $1 million of fund balance, so if you were to borrow $3 million of general fund, or utilize $3 million, of general fund balance, borrow $2.3 million, that bottom line number, line 26, FY 26 upfront equivalent impact, would be about 2.7 pennies under that scenario, with an additional $1 million of use of general fund balance. It's a lot, I know. No action, not looking for any action tonight. Wanted to set the stage for you, let you digest, and happy to follow up and answer any questions. I did just want to note for you, I know staff is working with the architects and reviewing timing for the projects, but under this, if this schedule holds with final project costs coming in May, late May, early June timeframe, we would be looking to go to the LGC as early as July 1st for their approval and close on a financing as early as July. Certainly that timing is up to you all, but that's about as quickly as we could go under this schedule. And if we wanted to do that, you can see there, we're getting started in the April timeframe, right? So I know you all are digesting updated project costs and digging in there, but if we want to move as quickly as possible on the financing, this just gives you a sense about of how quickly that could evolve if you choose to do it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to do questions?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all the breakdown that you did for us and the different scenarios, and the tax increases that would be necessary to pay off this loan, which doesn't include the taxes we need for our operating budget. So it's a good way to start on budget discussions for the years, and I appreciate it. Timing is excellent.
Mayor Pro Tem.
In the figures that you used, was there any anticipation of growth and change in our?
Yes, sir. So when we're calculating the equivalent number of pennies, you're using your current value of a penny, and I'm just double checking myself. We're assuming minimal growth, 1% growth in future years. That's natural growth, doesn't factor any future revals or anything. It's just,
which is basically what we've been like over the past 10 years, a little bit under 1% a year. But we could anticipate growth starting in 27, 28, 29. So the scenario where we're not killing the taxpayers today, but by the time we need to start putting those figures that you put in year 28, 29, and 30, we could have a much bigger than a 1% increase in revenue. That we can't anticipate, but.
I mean, we're certainly having to run whatever scenarios would be helpful, but if.
Well, no, this is fine, because this gives us the basic figure. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Albright.
I agree
With, Commissioner Kuczynski, I think it's a good starting point, and it almost makes you think that we've got to like hurry up and make a decision, because it is April. Today is April.
Yes, ma'am, and we're not, this was like, if we want to do it on the time frame.
Right.
Lined up with the project, but all of this is up to you all, that y'all
Yeah.
make those decisions.
Yeah.
So, just
Yeah.
wanted to give you perspectives, kind of,
Yeah.
some of the key steps and time.
Yeah, keeping it in layman's terms, you did a pretty good job, because I actually did understand most of it. Then you got up to the pennies, and I was like, yeah, I think I understand it. But yeah, it was great. I understood a good, at least 60% of it anyway. I'm not much of a figures person, but, yeah, it's great, your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Mr. Wilkins.
Great presentation, easily understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Lee?
So just to wrap it up, so going forward, I will be start having those conversations with you all, possibly here at our next budget work session, or, start kind of getting the idea of which route, you all want to go, funding options as well that I have discovered kind of just by looking at our balance sheet and other things. So I just want to prepare you all, so get it in your mind when we start talking about budget, because this is the kind of the time that we kind of need to talk about it, because we got other items we got to address as well, so it's kind of good to address them all at one time.
We look forward to your guidance. Haven't let us astray yet.
I'll try not to.
All right, any other questions before we move on? Not hearing any. Again, thank you both. Very informative. We look forward to this project really taking off, so thank you for your help.
Yes, sir, thank you.
All right, at this time, we move to 9B, legislative issue update. Commissioner Kuczynski, I believe, is doing that.
That's me. I just wanted to update the board and, anybody else who needs to know that our donut hole annexation bill was reintroduced by Senator Everett on the Senate floor a couple months ago. But since that time, the de-annexation portion of that bill has been removed from that bill, added to another bill, and on March 26th, the Senate approved the de-annexation of 75 acres out of the city of Creedmoor. It went to the House today, and it passed on first reading, and is now in the Rules Committee. So I just want to bring everybody up to date on it.
And that's purely the de-annexation bill.
Just the de-annexation, but in speaking with Senator Everett on Friday, he said that he is going to try to work with other senators to take the annexation portion of our original bill and see if they can work it into another bill so that they can get that part through, because he does understand how important it is to us.
All right, any questions for Mr. Kuczynski? All right, thank you, ma'am, we appreciate that. All right, we move now to item 10, new business, 10A, Parks and Recreation Trust Fund. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Commissioners, I'm happy to introduce to you this evening Ms. Amanda Lewis as the Regional Project Manager for Carter Regional Council of Governments. A few weeks ago, when Ms. Lewis offered her technical assistance to the City of Creedmoor for a North Carolina Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, or PARTIF grant, for a playground at the Creedmoor Community Center located at 108 East Wilton Avenue, I graciously accepted her offer. As the first step in the process, Ms. Lewis has completed a submittal to the State Historic Preservation Office and is actively working on the grant application for the project, Ms. Lewis is here this evening to make a presentation to the board. The deadline for that grant is May 1st, 2025. Amanda, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Thank you for having me, Mayor and Commissioners. I really appreciate you seeing me this evening. My name is Amanda Lewis. I'm here to talk to you today about the Creedmoor Community Center Phase 4. In 2018, there was a Part F site plan developed for how you see it today. There's a section on there where it has the recreational space reserved for future, and that's the proposed project site for this grant application. So today we are requesting the project team, which is myself, Mr. Turner, and Creedmoor staff member, Angie. I do not remember her last name, I apologize. Today we're requesting certification and approval for the proposed project to add 3 recreational areas to the recreational space smart future on that Part F site plan. Based on the public feedback that the recreational survey is ongoing, we have requesting match funds of $125,000 from the general fund for the Part F grant. This is the match requirement to pursue the grant. That would bring the project total to $250,000. And then requesting the master plan to be updated to reflect the public opinion in 2025 before the application submittal, which I can provide support with. So our timeline for this project, we submitted the wetlands compliance, which was to the Army Corps of Engineers. It was initiated on March 26th. We reviewed the 100-year floodplain, which is current FEMA data, on March 26th as well. And then we prepared the SHPO documentation and submitted it on March 27th. The SHPO documentation is the State Historic Preservation Office. And then today, we're here to seek certification and approval by the local governing board, hopefully. So we are going to propose Part F public feedback engagement for April 12th. You guys had an existing community gathering meeting for April 12th, so we're going to utilize that public convening to gain feedback specifically for what recreational items or facilities that they would like to see at the community center. And then we would have to present before the Parks and Recreation Board, and that presentation would be set for April 24th. And then the application for the Part F grant submission would be due May 1st or earlier. This is just a screenshot of our wetland compliance submitting to the Army Corps of Engineers. They should receive feedback from them within, I think they said 10 business days. I have not received feedback from them at this time. We don't foresee any negatives where they would say we could not proceed with the project. This is a photo of the 100-year floodplain current data from FEMA. There are no proposed issues with their data for the project site location. And then this is a brief snip of the SHPO documentation, and you all have the complete SHPO documentation. It's about 15 pages long. I didn't want to review all of that. Most of it is photos of the site. It does include the site description, including latitude, longitude coordinates, and then the proposed recreational areas of the site, but they are undetermined at this time with some potential ground disturbance. And then it goes over like that you possess ownership of the property, things like that. So this is your certification and approval by local governing board. This is a snip straight out of the application. This is one of the requirements to seek the Part F grant. We do need approval from you guys in order for us to submit and then accept it. If we do not have approval from you all, then the application would not be accepted from the Part F team. And then this is for the sources of the applicant's match funds, which would be verified through the board approval meeting minutes. This is a simple document we put together that shows the cash match value of $125,000 for the total match funds that would be required to seek the grant in the amount the project is proposed at currently. And this is a snip of the master plan as it is right now from 2018. It's currently under review. So one is we propose recreation areas need to be updated. I circled those in red where there's a proposed playground, covered pavilion, and volleyball courts from the 2018 master plan. We wanted to update that to reflect current resident desires. There will be a slight planning cost to revise the site master plan if you seek the MHA Works, who was the original contractor, to update the plan. In my opinion, there may not be. And then there would be recommending, working with previous contractor for the update. This is an example of the public engagement open house that you guys had earlier in March. This would be a similar convening in April 12th, and then we would just include wanting feedback from the public that joins us in that session specifically for this Park S grant application and what recreational areas they would like to see added to that community center. Thank you guys for allowing the Carter Regional Council of Governments to partner with you and providing technical assistance to support the project in Creedmoor. Do you guys have any questions for me?
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, maybe this is as much for the city manager as you, but if you could go back one slide, I guess, to where the circle was on the, currently that's a Veterans Memorial Park. The monument is there, or am I looking at something wrong?
It's, actually, the sidewalk you see coming from the parking lot, the monument's on the right side of that sidewalk. The left side, part of the left side is the intended Veterans Plaza. The next left side there, which is a larger green area, on the left side of that red circle, is the children's, area. Yes, sir. And I'm working on a new site plan for Amanda to be able to submit with this grant, which will reflect that appropriately.
That answers that question.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Albright, any questions?
So the match, we have to put in $125,000.
For the current proposed project budget, yes, ma'am.
And Lee, does this come out of our general fund, or does this come out of?
The rec fund.
General fund, because recreation is within the general fund, so, yeah, we can fund, amount appropriated.
And the estimated cost of the playground equipment is between $250,000 and $300,000. So we'll just have to see where that goes, but, I think it's a great opportunity to get some additional funding. Amanda does this for a living, so I'm really appreciative of her taking her time to help us with that. And McAdams Company, who's doing our 10-year recreation plan, is aware of this area being targeted for a children's area, so that we're keeping them informed in this as well.
Anything else? Mr. Wilkins?
So on April 18th, we'll have a better idea of what the residents want.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Well, I am so glad that this is finally starting to happen. And thank you so much, Amanda, for helping us with the grant with this. The Cartar COG helped so many people. I don't know how in the world you have time to get this all done, but you're very, very busy, and I appreciate it very much. A question for the city manager. There was a newer plan drafted by the first recreation director. I thought that he had a master plan that was done after this one. And my question is, why are we going with this one instead of that one?
Because I'm working on the new one. We do have another one. I think you said
There's one-
2018, Amanda, wasn't that what that is?
That's 2018.
Yes.
But then Chris
I
did
do.
another one on.
We do
20.
have one. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. A lot updated than that. Yeah. It doesn't show the ball field. It shows the sports plaza.
Right.
The walking tracks and things that are not on this one. So I'm working on that update to be submitted with the grant.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you again. I'm excited. I know that the citizens of Creedmoor are really looking forward to having a playground to walk their children to.
Yes, my understanding that they want a playground for children that are younger, because there's not as much outdoor recreation for them in that location.
And the playground equipment that Ms. Perry and I were looking at is inclusive playground equipment for handicapped children also.
Okay.
I'll make a
All right, at this time, a requested motion is to approve the execution of the certification and approval document for the State Historical Preservation Office. Commissioner Kaczynski.
I would like to make the motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Kaczynski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries, and I have been messing this up the whole night. Barbara. Thank you. It just occurred to me. Motion carries 4-0. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Faines, I believe you are item 10B, budget amendment number 7.
Yes, sir. Mayor, Board, this amendment appropriating funds for the previously approved agreement with Pace Analytical to do samples of 5 random fire hydrants in the city limits. So the monthly cost for these samples was $1,551.20. So this amendment is appropriating $6,205 of general fund balance to fund the remaining 4 months of this fiscal year, so March, April, May, and June. I believe recently we just received our first bill, so the first invoice is in for the first sample testing. So once approved, this amendment will be keyed and we can go for the remainder of the fiscal year. And then the remaining funds will be budgeted in the next fiscal year for the remaining months that's in the agreement.
Okay. Mr. Wilkins.
I'd like to make a motion when appropriate.
All right, motion to approve budget amendment number 7 in an amount not to exceed $1,551.20 per month is made by Commissioner Wilkins. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, sir. As always, excellent job. All right, we move down now to discussion items, and there is none. City Manager's report.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Gleason, and Commissioners, on March 10th, 2025, the Finance Director received a final reimbursement of $13,834.83 from the NCDOT for the 5700 Cell L project, which is now completed and closed out. On March 18th, the McAdams Company held a public engagement in the Willow Oak Room of the Community Center for public input on the new 10-year Parks and Recreation System-wide Master Plan. Approximately 30 people attended. The next scheduled event is for input on Saturday, April the 12th at Lake Rogers Park. Monthly water testing of fire hydrants by Pace Analytical began on March 18th. Results are expected in the next 7 to 10 business days, so I expect them today or tomorrow. That 10 days should be up. We're currently getting estimates for signs to post on the cross-city trails after consulting with the city attorney how this should best be worded. We'll read, please exercise caution while using the cross-city trails. Proceed at your own risk, and these signs will be placed at entry locations from one end of the cross-city trail to the other. I am currently in the process of appointing a mural steering committee to make recommendations for site selection for the mural, develop project scope, selection of a mural artist, the selection of historical pictures that may be depicted on that mural, community involvement, and grant opportunities. So that I've underway now, appointing several people. One I've invited is the Arts and Rec Director from Vance Granville Community College, the local art teacher here in South Granville, a few local folks that are aware of the history of Creedmoor. Item number 6, National Incident Management Systems, or NIMS training has been completed or scheduled for all city employees. As you know, Crisis Tech is also currently in the process of interviewing department heads for their assigned responsibilities as we prepare for a final draft and tabletop exercise for the first emergency operation plan for the city of Creedmoor. And finally, the Finance Director and I are in the process of making our recommended budget reductions for an updated presentation at the board's April 15th, 2025 work session. Mayor, that concludes my comments unless the board has questions.
Mr. Wilkins, any questions for the City Manager?
None, sir.
Commissioner Albright? Commissioner Kuczynski?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem? Mr. City Manager, as always, a job well done. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we move down to, let's see, department heads reports. I thought that was all included in yours.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Commissioner's report. Let's start with the Commissioner Kuczynski. Oh, did I miss Nick Lawson? Sure did. I apologize, Commissioner Kuczynski. Wrong heading, right person.
That's okay, that's all right. The groundbreaking for the I-85 sanitary sewer project was held on Friday. It was attended by quite a few people, and I did notice today that there were pictures from the East Middleton Station Road area showing that construction had begun. What confused me, and I put a comment on it on social media, was that at the groundbreaking, we were told that the Joe Pede Pump Station clearing would be the first part of the project and would start Monday. So I'm not sure what happened. I've got a question in to Seguasa upper management, asking them how it changed, but that's all I have.
All right. Any questions for Seguasa? All right. And I think I'm good to move on to Commissioners' reports now and go to Commissioner Kuczynski.
Why don't you just let me stay there? I'm excited to hear that the water testing has begun in the city of Creedmoor. I know that many citizens have reached out to me personally and by email thanking us for doing this. We are not. I'm going to say it again. We are not testing for PFAS because we know there's PFAS in the water. Testing it would be a waste of the city of Creedmoor taxpayer dollars. Seguasa's done the testing, and we know what the levels are. There will also be on next Tuesday night's Seguasa meeting, the people who presented the PFAS filtration system information will be there to inform the public again on all the things that are needed to be done for that filtration system that we are going to have to purchase. That's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem.
Short period between our work session and this meeting, I did attend, along with Commissioner Kuczynski, the route of the Sewer 85 project ribbon cutting, and I was told directly from the director that they were starting at Joe Pede Road and working toward 85.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the thing today that they were starting at the Milton Pump Station, I was a little miffed as well, but I get miffed a lot, so that's the only thing I have.
All right, Mr. Wilkins.
On March the 10th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce's dinner. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Albright.
I have nothing to report.
I wasn't gonna say that. All right, let's see, Mayor's report, I'm pretty much with Commissioner Albright. Just not anything really needs to be brought in that involves the city. That's all right, we appreciate what you do. All right, is there anything else that needs to be brought to the board in open session before we go into closed session? Not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Mr. Wilkins has made the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you all for attending.